Welcome into the Blogger Bowl. It's the Week 12 recap, rivalry week preview edition. Dan is wearing the Marshall t-shirt. I think just to troll me at this point, because every time Notre Dame has a big win, Dan's got the Marshall shirt on. I'm just kidding, Dan. It's a joke. I know you're not trolling me.
No, so here's the thing, right? As
I
you
also
can probably
I got a quick little giggle watching the intro every time I see Tyler Van Dyke because we thought Miami was going to be good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, that's one of those things where it's like, well, should I change that? And then it's like, well,
just
I don't
own it
really
at this
care
point.
to
It's
do
fun.
it that much or whatever. It's fine. No, as you can probably tell from my background, I am not in my office as usual. I am in Minnesota for Thanksgiving. I am at my sister's house, and this was just one of the shirts that I happened to pack and the shirt that I happened to put on this morning, and it didn't dawn on me until I was sitting here that I'm trolling you with the Marshall shirt. It was completely coincidental. So
I know I'm giving you a hard. It is a good shirt. As much as it hurts looking back now, knowing that if Notre Dame doesn't lose to Marshall and lose to Stanford, they're probably looking at a win and in spot in the playoff right now. It's still okay for me. I'm okay with it. But enough about the Irish. We'll get into them in a little bit. They have a big game with USC. We got to recap what happened in Week 12. There was some stuff that happened, like some teams surviving and then one team really, 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 really not surviving.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of were going over a little bit before the show. It was funny because last week we talked, we were like, oh, well, the slate this week's not great. It's just kind of sleepy, whatever. We didn't really want to talk about a ton of games. And then, of course, it was the week where everything went haywire. And, TCU and Michigan surviving in the early window was a harbinger of things to come. I do want to talk about what we thought was probably the most interesting game of the week going into the week, which was the UCLA-USC game. All I really have to say about that is give Caleb Williams the Heisman Trophy. Like if we're going to just default to giving CJ Stroud the Heisman Trophy if Ohio State wins this week, I'm presuming they're going to win the conference title game. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I'm just assuming. I think it's a safe assumption at this point. Like then it just kind of harkens back to the issue of that award and what that award should be and what that award means. Because I don't know how you could watch those two guys play and in big moments this year, like Caleb Williams had one bad game. He was bad against Oregon State. His bad game wasn't as bad as CJ Stroud's bad game, which was against Northwestern, although I understand the weather conditions were what they were in that game. But that's a dude. That's a guy who time and time again has stepped up for his team and made plays and made throws when they've needed him to. It was a who's going to break serve kind of game, and USC just made more plays, and they were able to get the scores that they needed. They were able to keep UCLA from getting that one final drive that they needed. They got Dorian Thompson-Robinson to throw the one interception that he needed. I'm not taking anything for granted for this team. Like I think that if USC runs the table, they win this week, they win next week, they're going to be in the playoff, and I think they will have deserved that. But even against a Notre Dame team that's offensively has been up and down, let's just say this year, like I think that defense is still super sketchy, and I don't think that anything that happened in that game was unsurprising. Like I think that what that game ended up being kind of what you had to expect it to be. The total was 77.5 and it ended 48-45. Caleb Williams, just to clean that up, he was 32 of 43, 470 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jones filling in for Travis Dye. Austin Jones had 21 carries for 120 yards and a couple of touchdowns. They ran the ball for 4.7 yards per carry, so not quite as lethal as they have been, but they kind of needed to be throwing the ball in that game. And they're very well balanced on offense. And if Austin Jones can run the ball like that, then the Travis Dye injury is not going to really affect this team as much as we thought it might. But at the same time, you are now going to play a team in Notre Dame. We'll talk about this game in depth. I'm really just going to lay out and let you kind of talk about that game later. But we're in a situation now where this is a team that, like, Notre Dame can challenge them. And if Notre Dame can stop the run and make them one-dimensional, Notre Dame, I think, can give them a game. But if Caleb Williams plays the way he has, and he did throw an interception, which has been pretty rare for him this year, but if he plays the way that he just keeps playing, then they're going to be really good, and they're going to earn their way into the playoff.
Yeah, and if they win out, I don't think it's a debate anymore now that if Tennessee would have won out and USC won out, then it's a debate. I think if USC wins out, they are in the college football playoff, and I don't really think there's an argument against keeping them out of the college football playoff. And we talked about it last week. It kind of felt like a last team with the ball is going to win this game. And I mean, USC did end up being the last team with the ball. They took a couple knees after making the one really big defensive play that we were waiting for either team to make. And CJ Stroud was probably going to get the Heisman by default if nobody really went and grabbed it. But for me, I mean, even if they lose one of these two games, I still see Caleb Williams doing enough to go ahead and grab it. And it's like, it's almost, I mean, you talked about the way this USC team operates, that quarterback kind of has to do it all. Not much there defensively, but the offense is dynamic and they can make a run to the playoff. But if they do, they'll probably not, their defense will be the ultimate, letdown for them. And it sounds exactly like what Lincoln Riley did at Oklahoma when he brought some pretty good offenses with no defense to a college football when just better all around team. But yes, Caleb Williams was by far the most impressive player of the weekend. I think on any team, he had his Heisman game, and it's weird to say that it took this long for someone to have one, but it really seems like this is the first, like, outside of maybe Hendon Hooker against Alabama, like the first, like, yeah, we're looking back on this as that's a moment that won the Heisman, and okay, yeah, it's coming in the second to last week of the season. But that is by far the most standout performance of the season, especially from anybody. I mean, Blake Corum's had a lot of big number games, but they've done those things against not the greatest of competition so far, and we'll get into that too. But I mean, Caleb Williams, biggest rival, one of the biggest rivals, top 20 team in the country on the road, goes and puts up those numbers. I mean, that's a Heisman winning game for me.
Yeah, so Caleb Williams has completed 64.9% of his passes. CJ Stroud, 66.4%. Caleb Williams has 3,480 yards. CJ Stroud has 2,991. CJ Stroud has 35 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Caleb Williams has 33 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Like, what we're sitting here saying, and now I'm kind of doing this on the air. This is bad TV, but
that's fine.
Bad radio. And their one loss to Utah, Caleb Williams was 25 of 42 for 381 yards, 5 touchdowns, and also ran for 57 yards. Like, the difference is he played a team that could beat his, and CJ Stroud has not.
Yeah, the difference, like, even in the game they lost, Caleb Williams scored a go-ahead touchdown late, right, and his defense gave up a 2-point conversion in a drive, and he had 13 seconds or whatever it was to go down and tie it, and that's just very hard to do.
Yeah, he had his Heisman moment in that game, but Utah came back.
Exactly.
And found a way to win.
So he just had to go have another one against UCLA, and it seems like he did that. I got nothing else on this one. That was a very fun football game, and it sounds cliche, but it's rare those types of games live up to the hype of the back and forth and the over and all the points, and that one was exactly what we thought it would be down to the last minute.
I'm flipping the order here a little bit on us because we talked about a team that has played their way into the playoff conversation, has a chance to play their way into the conversation. A team who saw everything that they have built this season come to a very thorough, very destructive, and very sad end. The Tennessee Volunteers lose 63-38 at South Carolina. They give up 63 points to an offense that I'm pretty sure did not score an offensive touchdown the week before, and to add injury to insult, Hendon Hooker, who has been marvelous, who's been one of the great stories in college football this year, suffered a torn ACL. I mean, the consolation for this Tennessee team is if they beat Vanderbilt, who is very frisky, Vanderbilt coming off of back-to-back wins. If Tennessee wins that game, they'll finish 10-2, and they will end up in a New Year's Six bowl. It looks like all the projections I've seen them in the Cotton Bowl, which will be against whoever wins the American. So not necessarily the most high-profile game when you were staring down a playoff berth or maybe a Sugar Bowl berth, but we kind of talked about it a lot this year. That Tennessee defense looked gettable. Florida got to them. Alabama got to them. They were able to win those games. Georgia could have scored a lot more points if Kirby Smart had decided they wanted to try to score more points and it wasn't pouring rain there. And Spencer Rattler, 438 yards and 6 touchdowns, looked like the guy he was before last year. I mean, it's just tough. Like, I'm not a Tennessee fan. Like, I grew up a Georgia fan. I don't really care one way or another anymore. The idea that this was one of, like, the elite teams, that this was a team that could win a national championship, kind of rankled me because I just never really believed in that defense. So from that standpoint, like, Hendon Hooker getting out of that game healthy, this would have been satisfying to me in some form or fashion, because I just thought that this team, one, already had their chance, and we saw pretty definitively when they played Georgia, when Georgia brings their A game, who don't have this on the list, but man, another lazy performance from Georgia, another just really, like, listless performance from Georgia against Kentucky on Saturday. But Tennessee, like, was one of the great stories of the year, but we see this from time to time, a team who punches above their weight. It's kind of funny, I guess. Let me backing up for a second. It's like September, we talked about Kansas a lot. Like, Kansas was the darling team of September. Then they have the Daniels injury, and realistically, like Kansas wasn't very good, and we knew it. They were playing above their weight. They're bowl eligible. They've had a phenomenal year by any means. Like however you want to slice it, that's awesome. Then there were some like other teams that kind of crept in. We talked a little bit of like Illinois as a team in October who was playing very well, kind of surprisingly, and then they kind of fade into the darkness the last couple of weeks. We'll talk about them in a second. But November, it's like Tennessee is the team now that like at the end of November is the one who is just kind of faded into oblivion, and kind of makes you wonder if like TCU might be next. And we'll get to that game in a second. But like, what were your impressions of what happened in Columbia on Saturday?
Yeah, it was just, I mean, I don't even say the offense had a slow start. The offense had maybe a slow start or game in a hostile environment, but then kind of figured it out. And it seemed like kind of when they got into half, made it the 1-score game, I believe, going into that. I was like, all right, like they're fine. They're going to figure this out. The defense is going to get a little bit better. And then it just didn't. And it's hard to put a finger on what happened outside of just South Carolina beat the shit out of Tennessee's defense.
Yeah, they did.
The defense completely choked. It wasn't that good to start. I mean, obviously it had some holes where it was okay at stopping the run, and that was kind of its saving grace. But it had some holes that were exposed, but were able to make enough plays and were masked by a good offense. And in some situations, Alabama and Florida were at home and kind of had the home crowd behind them. It just kind of, when the adversity struck for that team, it was game over. And that was a team that had most of their big games at home this year, with the exception of Georgia, and that's the one that they went out and lost. And they got caught in a spot with a quarterback who hasn't been good the last 2 years, but we know has insane talent when he's on. And he took advantage of it, and he took advantage of that defense. And I mean, once South Carolina got rolling, there's nothing Tennessee could do.
Yeah, this is one of those, because it's college football games. South Carolina the week before against Florida, 237 total yards, 1 offensive touchdown, 3 fumbles lost in that game. They lost 38-6, and then they come out and they absolutely demolished Tennessee and kind of ended one of the storybook seasons of 2022, whatever year we're in right now. I just totally forgot what year we're in.
Yeah, almost 23. We're getting there.
Wow. Man, we are barreling towards New Year's. The other game that another one of the games I want to talk about before we kind of use what happened in the Big Ten to pivot towards this week. Number 4 TCU escapes with a 29-28 win at Baylor. And man, Sonny Dykes is a good coach. There's no denying that Sonny Dykes is a good coach. They are 11-0. They are 8-0 in the Big 12. They are still like they're staring down a date with the winner of Ohio State, Michigan in the semifinals if they can keep winning. I'm a little bit
Sonny Dykes got away with one.
Keep doing that. That said, what in the blue hell was TCU doing at the end of that game? Like,
he got away with one.
I'm sitting there watching this. I'm like, if you have a timeout, fine. Like, cool. Run the ball. Like,
I was watching the game too. I thought they had the timeout for a second because like they run the ball with 20 whatever seconds left. I was like, oh, okay, cool. They're just gonna call timeout. Or I was like, maybe like Fox switched the down too quickly and it already said third down. It wasn't second. I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. Like, this is fine. They'll just spike and kick. It's like, nope, they're running fast break field goal right now and they are sprinting out there. Oh my God, this is actually happening.
Let me ask you this, because I don't remember. I mean, we weren't a very well coached high school team.
Sure.
Was fire drill field goal something that you guys practiced when you were in high school or in college?
Not a ton in high school. In college, yeah, every Friday. And I would random times throughout the week probably do special teams, but every Friday during the walkthrough, there was always a fast break field goal situation. We do like a 2-minute drill on air, and then they'd run the kicking team out there. But very, very, I mean, enough where if we had to do it, yeah, we probably could do it, but like not that often. That's not something that everybody goes through and does all the time. Right. And it worked out. They played with fire a little bit and it worked out, but like how often do you actually see them do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And again, like, this is a bizarre question, but did you watch Breaking Bad, the TV show?
Of course,
Breaking
yeah,
Bad?
Of course.
You know how like the he can't keep getting away with this meme with Jesse?
Yeah, that's Sonny Dykes.
That's TCU. Because not only did they just like luck out at the end with the field goal unit coming through and saving Sonny Dykes' ass, but man, this is another game where Baylor had every chance to win this game. Blake Shapen was TCU's best player in this game, arguably. I mean, he threw for 269 yards and a touchdown, but he threw a pick. He missed some open receivers. He made some bad decisions in this game. And in a game like this against the number 4 team in the country, when you're an underdog, like the margins are so fine, they're so thin.
Mm-hmm.
And Baylor had their chance to win this game, just like several other teams have had their chance against TCU. This kind of feels like they escape Iowa State, although I'm not fully convinced that's going to happen because it's college football. It kind of feels like they escape Iowa State and then they go to the Big 12 championship game and they get a rematch with Kansas State, and Kansas State just kind of puts it on them.
Yeah. So this was intriguing to me because I was at home. It was my brother's birthday Saturday, so I was at my parents' house and I was watching the games with my dad, and we had that one on, and we had it was the beginning of Notre Dame Boston College, I think. And I was talking to my dad when TCU kicked that field goal, and this is going to sound like this is reference close to me, but TCU's team this year reminds me so much of Notre Dame's 2012-13 team that there were legit, and I forgot whose quote it was. I think it was Chuck Martin, who's the head coach at Miami, Ohio, basically said we were as close that year to being 12-0 as we were to being like 4-9 or 4-8. Like there were that many games decided by, there were missed field goals or stuff late. There were tossed. What? Why are you closing your eyes?
Because you know what I have to say, right?
Yeah, Notre Dame got their ass kicked.
No, not that. Who's
No.
going to be the Manti Te'o at TCU?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's Max Duggan. Who knows? I'm
Okay,
over.
sorry.
Man, you're fine. Man, you're fine. I still got to watch that documentary, by the way.
It was good. It was good.
But so many games that they just got by the skin of their teeth, and they, every single bounce that could bounce away, bounced Notre Dame's way that year. It seems like every single time there's a coin flip that's going to decide a game here, it goes TCU's way. And hey, they're taking advantage of it. They're winning football games, and if they go undefeated, they should be in the playoff. But that's probably where their luck runs out.
So 2 things unrelated to that. I'm glad you brought up Chuck Martin because this is like 3 weeks late or 2 weeks late. But Chuck Martin should be sued by Brett Gabbert's family for leaving him in. They were down 14 or 21 points, and they were still trying to throw Hail Marys at the end of whatever their last Maction midweek game was, and Brett Gabbert suffered a knee injury. Take the knee and go home. Nevertheless, the one thing I was like, the Te'o documentary was very good. I will say, and I don't think this is like spoiling anything, they don't explicitly say this, but there is sort of the intimation from the producers that like they try to very like delicately make the claim that maybe if Manti Te'o hadn't been going through everything he had been going through, that they would have played better as a team against Alabama. And it's no, sir.
I had a kid I played high school football with was a walk-on on that team, and I remember talking to him a couple of years ago, like after about the film session they went through. He's like, "Yeah, we were a couple plays from only losing that game by like 2 or 3 touchdowns. Like that's how big the difference was. Like, yeah, like we didn't play well, but if we did, we'd probably lose that game by 17 as opposed to how like 40-13 or whatever the final score was. So that was nowhere near close."
The story that I remember hearing from someone who was on the field for that game on sidelines, like watching, was the Alabama players were pissed that they weren't winning by more points at halftime. That's what that game is. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like, I hope for their sake. Now that said, I mean, if TCU does get into the playoff, and we'll talk about this, I guess, more in depth later in the coming weeks if they win this week. I think at least getting Ohio State instead of Georgia probably works out pretty better for them, because I think that Ohio State's secondary is shaky. If they can protect Max Duggan enough, like the TCU offense is, a lot of it is we're just going to take shots down the field. And we've seen Ohio State secondary be a little dicey. So I think if they play Georgia, that's a absolutely terrible matchup for them.
Yeah.
In a game that's going to be a de facto road game, because the Peach Bowl is one of the number 1 seed gets to choose which bowl game they go to. And the Peach Bowl is one of the playoff games. So Georgia's going to get a home game.
Georgia's going to play the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, Georgia's going to, well.
What's the other game? We've talked about it. I feel you brought up. What's the other one?
I'm just saying maybe don't discount LSU. I'm just counting LSU. The other 2 games, which will kind of get us to this week, Ohio State 43, Maryland 30, and then earlier in the afternoon, Michigan 19, Illinois 17. Kind of feels like the Michigan game was maybe a little bit more alarming and less looking ahead to next week than the Ohio State one, which certainly felt more like Ohio State probably looking ahead, although Talia Tagovailoa, 293 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, you can throw the ball on Ohio State, but you talked last week, I thought, and you made a great point, and we kind of talked about it together, was what's going to happen if Michigan needs J.J. McCarthy to go win a game? And they got the job done against a team that they really should have never been in a dogfight with to begin with. But I didn't come away
Barely.
from that game overly impressed with what J.J. McCarthy did. Chase Brown was the best running back on the field in that game. He had 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Blake Corum injured his knee, left the game, came back for, I think, one play. And then I don't
It's
think
like
he played
one play,
after.
and then I think he
And
left
I think
again.
he sat again the rest of the game. So that's something to monitor. There is literally no reason for Jim Harbaugh to say anything about that
Yeah.
this week.
Oh, he won't. We won't know if
So,
Blake Corum plays
right.
until they take the field.
Or how effective he's going to be or what those expectations are. But of those 2 games, let's start with Michigan. I mean, first off, do you agree with my assessment about
Yes.
how those 2 games played out? And then more of the Michigan side of things, because that was one of the games we talked about last week. Do you also agree with the sentiment of J.J. McCarthy was not overly convincing in a spot where it was the first time we've gotten to see what he has in a crunch time situation?
I mean, both teams did not obviously play terribly well. For me, Ohio State, though, like every time they needed to put together a drive and go score, they just did it. Like there was never really this, are they actually going to lose this game? It wasn't, they weren't trailing really in the fourth quarter. Like whenever they really needed to go out and get points, they did, and they were able to move the ball, and that's fine. And can they do that against Michigan? No. If they approach this Saturday's game that way, they're going to be in trouble. But Michigan, like, every time they needed points, they needed drives in the second half. And I know Blake Corum's a very good football player. He's one of the best running backs in the country. But the second he was out and they couldn't run the football, Michigan couldn't go get points. Like they got points because Illinois took some penalties. Illinois pretty much went into shell mode, which we could talk about if you want to too. How Brett Bielema handled that. I get it, wanting to get the ball to your best player and say, go win it for us. But when they're loading the box and just daring you to throw, sometimes you have to use that as a decoy. But Michigan needed drives a few times in that game, and they really weren't able to go do them even when they needed them. J.J. McCarthy and that offense were really only able to finish off field goal drives. I thought there was a lot of shakiness. I thought there was a lot of uncertainty with that team at home against a team they're much better than. And I'm standing by what I said. If they're down a score or 2 in the third quarter against Ohio State and they got to start throwing the football, or if Blake Corum's not 100%, or if Donovan Edwards isn't 100%, I do not think that J.J. McCarthy can bring them back. I still can be proven wrong, because that's literally the Illinois game's literally the only instance where we've seen him have to do it. And he technically did it, but he didn't look all that impressive at doing it. And I'm not sure he's going to be able to do it against Ohio State on the road in a hostile environment.
Yeah, Michigan, they had a negative EPA per play, negative 0.9, negative 0.09 EPA per play, a 35% success rate, 5 yards per play. Now, they had Illinois to 4.94 yards per play, but that's mostly because Illinois really didn't want Tommy DeVito to have to do a ton. Chase Brown's numbers in the analytics look a little off because he had the fumble, but like otherwise had a great game. And yeah, I mean, as we spin it forward and we talk about this game, it is going to be on noon. This is another thing that I didn't write down. I don't know, I've got to literally scroll through FanDuel right now. So this game's at noon on Saturday. Ohio State's a 7.5 point favorite. The total is 56. This game's a complete and total stay away for me because we just don't know. We don't know a whole lot about what's going on with either team at the skill position with some injuries. Ohio State's been dealing with it at running back. They also had some guys who looked good, but Henderson's been banged up a lot. Mayan Williams has been banged up. Part of me is wondering if they will, if they've been playing coy a little bit with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and the plan is to just unleash him for the first time in this game. It's like maybe there's been some just like, hey, we're gonna, and obviously it's a hamstring. You don't want to rush a hamstring injury anyway, but I mean, kind of feels underish to me. If Michigan's going to have any chance to win this game, they're going to have to do what they did last year. Now that said, it feels to me like, I talk about this a lot, a styles make fights kind of game. Because on the one hand, you have a Michigan team that if Ohio State is able to move the ball on them and score, is not built to come from behind. that is a team that is built to kind of control the game a certain way. We've talked about it just now. Like, you don't want this game to be on JJ McCarthy. You want this to be something where you can kind of play really good defense, frustrate Ohio State, and then run the ball well. On the flip side, though, for Ohio State, we have seen their offense struggle against good defenses. Like, they scored 54. Like, the 54 they scored against Iowa was about as misleading of 54 points as a team has ever scored in a college football game. They basically played that entire game in Iowa's half of the field, and it wasn't until late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, where the Iowa defense just finally wore down, and they gave up a ton of points in that game. But they did not. They started. They think they had like 5 or 6 drives in Iowa territory in the first half, and I think they only turned in one or like a touch, like 10 points, 13 points, something like that. They struggled that game. They struggled against Northwestern. That was somewhat weather related, but this is a team that when they have played a physical defense this year, other than Wisconsin, whose defense hasn't been like spectacular this year, they've really kind of struggled. Their offensive line has struggled at times this year against physical defensive fronts, which is what Michigan has. So, like, the things that Michigan does well on defense seem like they are going to be able to slow down Ohio State, and they're going to have to really lean on that defense, because if this becomes a situation where CJ Stroud is moving the ball and puts forth a performance worthy of winning a Heisman Trophy, then Michigan's going to be in serious trouble.
Yeah, it's for me. We talked about it with Michigan last week and Ohio State to an extent, but not as much. Those first half starts have just been so slow for both teams. Michigan, really, the last few weeks they were losing to Rutgers. Obviously, came back and blew them out. That needs to change for them. And Michigan, they did it again on Saturday against Illinois. You cannot have field goal drives against Ohio State if you're going to win this football game, because even if Ohio State's offense doesn't play great, they're still probably going to put up high 20s, low 30s. You cannot, like, field goals are not going to beat Ohio State. You can't be settling for field goals on 4th and goal from the 10-yard line if you don't move the ball or whatever. They have to finish drives that enter the red zone. I think that's going to be probably the biggest key for them, is their ability to finish in the red zone, because they've struggled to do that at times this year. We saw it a little bit against Penn State. Obviously, they did that later on, but like, they kept Penn State in that game early on, and Penn State had no business being in that game early on. Illinois stayed around because Michigan couldn't, finish drives, score touchdowns. They had a chance to win late because Michigan was only kicking field goals. So that's going to be it for me. Can Michigan finish their drives? Because all stems on their running backs being healthy, or at least one of the two, in Corum and Edwards being healthy. But if they can finish those drives, they're going to have a chance. But if they're struggling in the red zone and McCarthy's not hitting some of those throws, I think Ohio State is going to give them a lot of problems.
Yeah, these are two teams who are really good at quality possessions on offense versus defense. So Michigan, 3rd in quality possessions. Ohio State, 2nd in quality possession defense. So they don't give up a lot. We talked about it last week, though. Michigan, like, their one weakness on defense has been finishing drives, 39th in the country in points per quality possession. Ohio State, 24th. So they've been giving up more points relative to the number of quality possessions, but that defense has been really good across the board. The only weakness for the Michigan defense has been stopping offenses on 1st and 2nd down. They need to be able to force Ohio State into some 3rd and longs in this situation and try to get to CJ Stroud. If they're just allowing Ohio State to march down the field on them, that one is going to be a problem. I don't have any, but we didn't do this either. Do you have bets for this week?
Too early for that. I might tweet something out, or maybe I'll throw some. Maybe I'll edit this blog on like Thursday or Friday with some bets from all of us. But no, nothing for right now. I'll give out some action picks at the end.
Oh yeah, we have your action bets. I'm guessing, is Ohio playing this week?
Ohio's playing, but we don't know if Curtis Rourke is playing.
Oh, that's right. Your guy's hurt.
Yeah, he's gonna be a game time decision. So
his brother's in the CFL. So fun little twist. The what is it? The Grey Cup was on Sunday night, and every year, once a year, when we get to the Grey Cup, I find out who's playing in the Grey Cup, and then I go to the CFL stats page to see who their quarterbacks are, because I know it's always going to be someone I watched in college, and it was Zach Caleros again. Chad Kelly came off the bench from Ole Miss.
Hell yeah!
Argos
I think I did see that.
Yeah,
Swag Kelly.
It was fun looking through some of those and seeing that Nathan Rourke is playing in Canada now.
Yeah, I would imagine his brother Curtis will probably be following him there in a couple of years, and they'll have a Rourke versus Rourke battle, hopefully for a Grey Cup. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be spectacular. Yeah, hopefully Curtis gets a look from someone in the NFL. Although
Well, he probably will for at some point, but
after
then probably won't
after
end up
suffering a
sticking.
knee injury is probably not a great.
It's wild. I saw him in the brace, the big brace, the crutches last week, and they're saying this morning that maybe he's playing. It's not sure, but it's college football, and nobody ever really has to tell the truth until
Yeah,
you see him suit up. So we'll find out tonight.
exactly. The other, I would say, very big game of the week, at least in terms of intrigue, 18 Notre Dame at number 7 USC, and those numbers are going to change. I realize that they still haven't done the playoff reveal. No idea what day of the week it is.
Oh yeah.
I traveled yesterday. Our flight left at 6 a.m., so we had to leave for the airport at like 4.
Oh, I love those. Those are fun.
Monday. The only good thing is that I was flying Delta. Shout out to Delta, because we all know that everyone loves the airlines. They have live TV on their flight, so I was able to watch the first half of the England-Iran game, which was all you really needed to see of that one.
I heard. I wasn't up for that one, but I heard about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm all out of sorts. So we'll find out tonight. I'm assuming it's going to be the same top 4 that we've had the last couple of weeks. But number 18,
6? Who was 6?
6 was
USC probably jumps to. I think USC might jump LSU to 5.
I think USC is going to jump. I think they probably jump LSU. Not that it matters. LSU will play themselves in.
Yeah.
LSU can become the first 2-loss team to make the playoffs if they win out. So we'll see. That's another one that I might take A&M in the points, double digits, like 10, and it's just because it's college football. That team might have just completely quit.
A&M is so bad. They're so bad. They let UMass hang around.
Yeah, they did. They did. That's bad. Anyway, 18 Notre Dame at number 7 USC. USC is a 4.5-point favorite. The total 63.5, which scares the daylights out of me in a game involving Notre Dame having a total that high. But man, I'll leave it to you. What are you looking for? What does Notre Dame have to do to win this game?
Well, Dan, I feel like a broken record here, and I've said this on this show quite a few. Notre Dame's going to have to run the ball successfully to win this game, and I believe that they should be able to do that. I mean, they've done it against better defensive fronts. Navy gave them a little bit of problems in the second half when they just started sending 8 people, and they still tried to run the ball right into them, which was not all that smart. But they were playing keep away, protecting a lead. I think this is, if you talk about Ohio State, Michigan saying styles make fights, I think these two styles are perfect to make a fight. What's going to win out? Is it going to be Notre Dame's, we're going to run the ball 50 times on your defensive line and you can't stop us? Or will it be USC going down and scoring, in 3 minutes every drive? I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. I just know that this is it's really, they're perfect complements to each other. And I think Notre Dame is a team that can give USC problems because USC really hasn't seen a team that plays like Notre Dame this year. A lot of their big high-profile matchups, I know we talked going into the year about how Utah might be a physical defensive team and hard-nosed and all that. They're really not this year. They're much more of the opposite. They're much more of your typical Pac-12 team that kind of throws the ball a bunch, runs okay, and isn't very good on defense. USC is probably going to go up against the best defense they've seen this season, and they're going to go up against probably the best rushing attack they've seen this season, maybe until they play Oregon next week in the Pac-12 championship game. Can Notre Dame run the football? Can Drew Pine execute in play action? A few obvious passing situations, the few play actions they're going to run off to Michael Mayer or whoever the hell it is. I'm wildly intrigued by what Notre Dame can do on offense because I think if they can. I think their defense is going to give USC some problems. I still think USC is going to score, but it's the best unit they've seen all year. And if Notre Dame can run the ball and hold on to it effectively, I think that USC defense, if you're on the field for 6, 7, 8-minute drives, you're going to get tired quickly. So I'm interested to see what happens there, but that's what it's going to come down to. Can Notre Dame run the ball better than USC can pass it?
Yeah, so just kind of looking through some of the stat profile stuff, Notre Dame's offense, they're going to have to finish drives. They are 19th in the country in quality possessions and 82nd in the 71st in points per quality possession. That said, USC's defense 91st in points per quality possession allowed, which leads me to believe that they also give up a lot of big plays in this game. Defense, you've talked about strength on strength there. Notre Dame has to really try to be able to make Caleb Williams beat them on third down in this game. USC's been exceptionally good on early downs, but also on third and fourth downs. That's kind of the money down that we talked about. The run game, it's weird. Like looking back, UCLA ran for 204 yards on them, but 5.5 yards per carry. So it's still a pretty good number. I don't
Mhm.
remember it feeling like UCLA ran the ball as well as we thought they might be able to, but looking back, they did run the ball very well. And
A lot of those
yeah,
are
I mean,
quarterback runs too with DTR,
it was DTR
not like
had
traditional runs.
right. He had 81 yards on the ground in that game. A lot of that scramble yardage. Yeah, I mean, it kind of in some respects feels a little bit like Ohio State, Michigan, right?
Mhm.
Like this is the kind of game where if Notre Dame is forced to have to really throw the ball in this game a lot, uh, they're not going to win this game. So that said, if you like Notre Dame to cover in this game, I think it correlates with an under because it's just like there's not a chance Notre Dame stays in this game if it's a shootout.
No,
If it ends up going, if it's going to go over 63, then it's going to be like UCLA 49, Notre Dame, a number that Matt's not very happy with.
no, something in the 20s.
Yeah, like that just kind of feels like that's what is going to happen there. So I'm just going to literally now scroll through the rest of the at least ranked versus ranked or ranked games slate and kind of go over, just kind of get some thoughts on some games because it's
Sure.
rivalry week. Some of these games are great. Mississippi, now I probably need to go back and forth here too. I should probably go back up there.
Egg Bowl on Thursday. When did the Egg Bowl become a Thanksgiving tradition? Is that been?
I think it's been on Thanksgiving for just about forever.
Okay, because I don't know why I thought it was like relatively new, and by relatively I mean like the last like 7 or 8 years. But I love it. I think it's a perfect Thanksgiving game. It's big enough where like it's not usually going to be for going to a playoff or going to an SEC championship game, but like neither team is ever really that bad, so I feel like it's a perfect Thanksgiving game.
Well, first off, I was wrong. It's only been played on Thanksgiving 23 times. It came back on 2017, and it's been played on Thanksgiving since 2017. This is by far like the most batshit crazy rivalry game in college football. Like it is never normal. These are two programs that are not normal. These are two teams who don't play normal games against each other. All you have to remember is the dude fake peeing in the end zone and Ole Miss losing because the dude was it Elijah Moore? Fake peed in the end zone. Fake peed in the end zone. They got penalized. They missed the extra point and lost, which, by the way, changed the entire trajectory of both of those programs forever because that ended up with the Mississippi State coach getting fired and them hiring Leach. It's a 2.5-point spread. Mississippi's a favorite by 2.5 points at home. 58.5 is the total. And on top of that, I was not on Twitter a lot last night, but I did catch all of the shenanigans. Like, and it's kind of what I've talked about with Lane Kiffin, right? Like, if he does end up going to Auburn, which it's very likely he's going to go to Auburn, he just comes off looking like the biggest asshole.
Yeah,
going on social media and denying it like that.
If it was anybody but Lane who denied it that way, I'd believe them. But that's exactly something Lane would do before leaving for Auburn in a week. And I fully expect that's what happens. I think there's too much smoke for this to not have some fire to it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's a weird situation going on there, and the game's going to be
Hugh Freeze reunion at Ole Miss after.
So as I understand it, the SEC is not going to sign off on an SEC team's hiring Hugh Freeze.
That's probably for the best.
Because I think he probably he would have been Auburn he was on the short list of Auburn. I know that for a fact. Unrelated to this, just because we were talking about it, apparently USF is interested in Deion Sanders, which let's do that. Let's make that happen.
Yeah, so USF and Colorado were the two that he was talking. He's USF seems like probably the better fit.
The Colorado one, I'm not so sure I believe in because split zone duo. Shout out to those guys, Richard Johnson, Alex Kirshner, and Stephen Godfrey. They do a great show. Godfrey's really plugged in, and for a couple of weeks he's been saying Colorado is down to Tom Herman and Bronco Mendenhall. It's kind of like what do they want? Do they want splashy, bigger name recruiting guy Herman, or do they want program builder and Bronco Mendenhall? So those are the names that they threw out there, and he seems pretty confident that those are the two names that are at the top of the list of Colorado. I will reserve my thoughts for Colorado hiring Tom Herman if that actually happens for a later date because
we talked about Colorado not wanting to spend much money on the program. Bronco Mendenhall probably seems like the smarter
exactly.
Then if that's how they want to build a program, just program building, not being flashy. That sounds like the more inexpensive way for them to do it, to be nice, to put it nicely.
Side note, I love soccer probably more than anybody who works at our company.
Yeah.
And the team vibes chat.
There's a lot of
It's been a
World Cup
nightmare
chat
today.
going on.
It's been a nightmare today.
You know, somebody in there started a World Cup channel, but apparently all the talk is just back in the teams vibe.
I had to mute. So I'm at lunch. So I'm in Minnesota. I was at lunch with my fiance, my sister, and my brother-in-law, and my phone is just vibrating uncontrollably in my pocket. And I had to just mute the World Cup channel because I'm just like trying to enjoy. Because I'm also worried that it's like might be someone needs it. Like my philosophy this week is like if anyone else can handle it, though they're going to handle it. If it's something that I do, building whatever I need to build for whatever, I will do that while I'm here. I'm not going to do a lot of work. This is a vacation-ish week for me. But like I'm always worried that it's going to be something that I need to actually take care of, and I just keep checking it. It's just these fucking World Cup notifications.
I might need to mute the team. I might need to mute the
team
chat.
vibes is on the cusp of being muted this week. No thoughts on this game. Just one that's probably worth checking out on Friday if you're not a Texas fan, which I'm a Texas fan. And oh, holy crap! Hold on a second. Oh, so the Mississippi State Ole Miss game is at 7 p.m. On Thursday because I'm in the Central Time Zone right now, and my ESPN.com is defaulted to Central Time. So if you're not a Texas fan, which I am, Texas plays at noon or 11 a.m. Central on. Oh my God, I'm putting my phone on the floor. Jesus Christ, dude. I'm completely frazzled. On ABC, Tulane and Cincinnati.
That's Friday, right?
That's Friday, 11 a.m. Central. Tulane and Cincinnati.
Ooh, that's a great game to kick off Friday. I love that.
Perfect AAC.
That's a perfect wake up, have a nice little leftover sandwich.
All right, now I've got it. Now I'm going down a rabbit hole. I don't really want to go down, but all right, here we go.
I'm sad that we're obviously at the end of the college football regular season, but this weekend in terms of football watching, also while having like a USA game on Friday, this is perfect. You got that game kicks us off, which is great. Group of 5 game. You got soccer. You got Iowa, Wisconsin, I believe or Iowa, Nebraska, I should say. Always play that Friday. It's going to be a great weekend of sports. I can't wait.
So the winner of this game between Cincinnati and Tulane clinches their spot in the AAC title game. If not, I'm not really sure what happens because they will move into a tie with Central Florida and Houston. Tulane, I believe. Oh, Central Florida. So wait, hold on, that's not right. Central Florida beat Cincinnati. They beat Tulane. They did not play Houston, and I think Tulane beat Houston. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Nevertheless, if you're not watching Texas Baylor, which you should watch Texas Baylor because it's probably going to be the last time you get to watch Bijan Robinson play in college, unless Kansas beats Kansas State. So that's just going to be a really fun, interesting game if you like give small school football a chance. Which reminds me, we're 42 minutes into this. We need to keep moving because I do have to give a primer for the FCS playoffs, which start this weekend. Georgia Tech. Shout out we didn't even talk about another team, just like a very long shot to make the playoff, but North Carolina. See ya. Oof, good job. Bye. You lost at home. Yeah. You lost at home to Georgia Tech.
Later.
Iron Bowl. If Cadillac Williams can get a win against Alabama on the road in the Iron Bowl, does he get the Auburn job?
Only if Lane Kiffin gets cold feet.
Do they punt on Lane?
Only if Lane gets cold feet. No, the answer is no.
No. All right.
I love Cadillac Williams, and I hope he gets a job or stays on that staff.
He'll stay on that staff.
But I think it's.
Oregon at Oregon State. Oregon with their big win over Utah. Bo Nix wasn't going to play, and then he did end up playing in that game. He wasn't great, but he was good enough to get them that win. They go on the road in the Civil War. This is another sneaky. This is a 3:30 Eastern ABC game, so we actually get some afternoon Pac-12 football on network television.
That's not a night game?
No, it's not.
Oh, I feel like that game is always. I don't know why I feel like it's always at night, and it seems like it's pitch black, and I love it.
Well, yeah, because it's Oregon. No, do you know what the Pac-12 After Dark game is? If you think that game deserves to be Pac-12 After Dark, how about the
Washington State? Hell yeah,
Pac-12.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Does Washington still have a backdoor scenario into the Pac-12 championship game?
I believe they do. I don't know. Don't ask me to explain what it is because it makes no sense to me.
Okay.
But they do.
I didn't know if maybe you knew off the top of your head, but the short answer is yes. Weird things need to happen.
I would just caution Oregon. Oregon State can play. That's a team that has flown under the radar all year because they took their best shot. They got blown out at Utah, which happens, but their other losses were at Washington, a 3-point loss, and a 3-point loss at home to USC, in which they would have won the game if if Chance Nolan wasn't throwing the ball to the other quarterback the whole game. But if I'm not mistaken, they made the quarterback switch. You have Ben Gulbranson's been their quarterback the last few games, and it hasn't been great. But this is a team that they're going to want to run the ball. They're going to play solid enough defense, and it's at home. It's one of the bigger I'm not sure when the last time these two teams were playing when they both had at least 8 wins. So they don't have anything to play for other than knocking Oregon out of the Pac-12 title game, which would be just fine and dandy for them.
Yeah, sorry, I had to go in and mute the team vibes. I was just kept going off.
Oh,
but yeah, that
It's
game is that game's always seems like weird stuff happens in it too. If Bo Nix isn't totally healthy, and I know he played, but obviously we still were talking about an injury and whether or not he was going to play. If you don't get the best version of Bo Nix, weird stuff happens. Oregon State's going to come to play, and that's going to be one that comes down to the fourth quarter. That one's almost always close. Kind of doesn't really matter where each team is at, and both teams are actually pretty good in this one. So I'm really intrigued to see if Oregon State keeps that close. They could steal that game and really shake up the Pac-12.
Iowa State, TCU. TCU's a 10-point favorite. I don't need to look at anything. Give me Iowa State. I'm going to bet Iowa State. I don't care.
You know what? I think this game could be a 13-10 final.
Yes,
I'm not sure who's going to win it.
College football teasers are a terrible idea, but teasing Iowa State to 16.5 and the total up to 54 might be worth a fun sweat too. I just Iowa State is terrible. Iowa State's not good. However, they have dragged everyone down into the muck. Here, let me read Iowa's schedule. Let me read Iowa's game against Power 5 opposition this year. 10-7 win against Iowa. 31-24 loss to Baylor. 14-11 loss to Kansas. 10-9 loss to Kansas State. 24-21 loss to Texas. 27-13 loss to Oklahoma. Weirdly, a 31-14 win against West Virginia. 20-14 loss to Oklahoma State. 14-10 loss to Texas Tech. We've talked about it time and time again. It's the Felica stat. It's Matt Campbell in games where they're a 3.5-point favorite or a 3.5-point underdog in that range. They do not win those games. They're a 10-point underdog. If this game was in Ames, I would be betting Iowa State money line.
Oh yeah,
in this game. It's in Fort Worth. That's a long trip. I get it. But what they do is they just drag you down into the muck and play at their level and make you play ugly. Now, Hunter Deckers is going to throw 4 interceptions in this game, probably, whatever. But man, just 10 points. I'm taking it's a principal play. Have to play Iowa State.
It's the right side, and it might end up costing you at the end because Iowa State turns the ball over too much. But I think it's the absolute right side going in this game to be in. I think TCU wins. I think it's, again, kind of by the skin of their teeth, and they keep it very, very – Iowa State keeps it very, very close, and TCU finds another way to win a very close football game.
I'm also not going to touch it, but A&M, LSU, kind of the same thing. I might consider a teaser there. Tease it up and take the under, but
just your absolutely gross college football teaser. Yeah. I like it.
Vanderbilt with a shot to get bowl eligible against Joe Milton in Tennessee, and then we have Kansas at Kansas State. Looking at that, Kansas State is what does FanDuel have it at right now?
So if Kansas wins that and Texas beats Baylor, Texas is then in the Big 12 championship game.
I think something else might have to go their way. Let me.
Okay.
No, because that's exactly because they needed Oklahoma State to lose, and that was that a bad bet on our part? Yes. So Texas is 5-3, Kansas State is 6-2. So if Texas beats Baylor and Kansas State loses to Kansas, Texas will go to the Big 12 championship game. And I think if TCU beats Iowa State, I think Sonny Dykes is praying Texas wins tomorrow. Friday. What day? Wow. I just put a Friday game tomorrow, and tomor's Wednesday. Well, we usually do our preview on Thursday.
This whole week has no real field. There are no days this week. It's just
no days. Everything is just one long block of days.
Yes.
He's praying that Texas wins on Friday, and then they get through that game with Iowa State, and he goes and he prays to the good Lord in heaven that Jalen Daniels and Kansas Jayhawks have something for Kansas State in that game. However, after watching what Texas was able to do on the ground against Kansas, I am not optimistic. 10.5 is the number on FanDuel right now. I would consider laying it with Kansas State the way that those two teams are going. That certainly feels like Kansas State is going to win that game by a lot.
Seems like Kansas has run out of gas a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way, and Kansas State has been ascending and sets us up for the game that we kind of want, what would be the best Big 12 championship game possible. But let's just say Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Another thing, and then I will before I do a quick primer on the
Sure.
FCS playoffs, which reminds me I need to bring up those odds again right there. CLV, dude. CLV. Bijan
Talk about
Robinson
it
ran
every
for
week.
like Bijan Robinson ran for like 240 something yards against Kansas, and it was like midway through the third quarter. School records 350. Ricky Williams ran for 350 in a game, and I was just mad. Like, I love Bijan Robinson. If Bijan Robinson wants to come back next year, that would be awesome. That's not happening. And I love him. I know he loves Texas and all that, but like, he's gonna be a first round pick. And it's very rare that you can say a running back's gonna be a first round pick. He cannot play in a bowl game. Like, dude,
No,
if they don't go to the Big 12 championship game and win, go to the Sugar Bowl, like if it's the whatever, the Cheez-It Bowl or whatever we've been talking about.
Even if honestly, even if they're in a Sugar Bowl, I would probably
he shouldn't, but he shouldn't, but I think he would because what the program means to him and kind of like trying to restore Texas to its glory.
Yeah.
But if it's like the fucking Cheez-It Bowl or whatever that game is, like, no, go. Like, we
love
you, dude, but like, go.
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of what's happening there. The one thing I do want to talk about, the FCS playoffs start on Saturday. You can find all of these games on ESPN Plus. So be sure. I'm vamping a little bit to bring up the schedule here, and I got to bring up the bracket because I completely forgot I wanted to do this and would have forgot if I hadn't. 11 a.m. on. Ooh, that's weird. Oh no, never mind. That's the SWAC championship game. Elon and Furman is the first game up. You can, like I said, you can watch all these games. SEMO at Montana, a 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central game on ESPN2. So you'll even get some FCS playoffs on your linear television. I thought the bracket kind of sucked in some regards from a betting perspective. Holy Cross, shout out to Phil. Holy Cross got completely hosed. They gave Holy Cross the 8 seed. Holy Cross should be the 5 or the 6 seed, which means if they get through their second round game, they have to go to South Dakota State. If you're unfamiliar, 24 teams get in. Top 8 seeds get buys. The higher seeded team hosts starting in the second round. Interestingly enough, the first round goes to the site where the school that pays the most money. You bid to host playoff games, which is how Montana, who shouldn't be in the playoffs, is hosting a playoff game against SEMO, I believe.
I kind of love that.
Holy Cross got screwed. I really thought that the bracket was going to be South Dakota State 1, Sacramento State 2, and then Montana State 3 and North Dakota State 4. Did not work out that way. So they put North Dakota State and South Dakota State on the opposite side of the bracket. Now, if you haven't been following North Dakota State, they've had a weird situation where they had 3 contributors enter the transfer portal this week. They had some guys who were like big-time players for them, wanted to leave, and there's like rumors going around that there's kind of, I don't want to say mutiny, but the players and the head coach are just not vibing at all right now, and things are a little bit weird there. But Sacramento State's a program that's kind of been an afterthought most of their existence, and Troy Taylor, I've talked about him on the show before, has done a great job getting that program to where they are, the number 2 seed. But if North Dakota State goes on the road, I'm not super afraid of that. North Dakota State opened on FanDuel at plus 1,200 to win the national championship. And even with everything going on there, and their best player, Hunter Lipke, the running back, he's hurt. But like, I don't care. This is a team that's won 9 of the last 11 national championships.
Yeah, they just kind of keep winning, and it's truly next man up.
Yeah, it's truly next man up. They're just going to run the ball down your throat. And they haven't been super convincing this year. Like, the best team they played in the Missouri Valley was way down this year. I don't think they got a third team into the playoffs. Very down this year. They blew a lead against South Dakota State. They were unconvincing most of the year. But until someone beats them, I think you have to give them a puncher's chance to win the title. It's now down to 700. So, I bet it at 1,200 when it opened. So, yeah, I mean, check out these games. Otherwise, so if you're just looking for some games that might be fun, Southeastern Louisiana, Idaho is a game that's going to be at 7 on Saturday. That should be kind of a fun game. Fordham, if you haven't watched them, Phil won't like this. Fordham took Holy Cross to overtime. It's a 53-52 game. You need to root for Fordham to beat New Hampshire because that would be the second round game. Fordham, basically, they got bored during the pandemic and installed Tennessee's offense. So that was fun. And
that's kind of fun.
Part you never ask someone their age, but Matt, how old are you?
30
Matt
years
is 30. Did you know, Matt, that Gardner-Webb, the running Bulldogs, made the playoffs, I think, for the first time in a long time. Their coach is 33 years old.
Wow.
Made me feel absolutely ancient. So they made the bracket. They're playing Eastern Kentucky with a shot to play William and Mary. North Dakota got into the playoffs. So 3 teams from the Valley got in this year. But they basically did the bracket to do Missouri Valley versus Big Sky in the semis and see who comes through that. Can we get 2 South? Can we get 2 Missouri Valley? Can we get 2 Big Sky teams? Who knows? I honestly don't know if there's anybody out there that I'm super enamored with as a sleeper. Shout out to Montana State, one of my only winning bets of the week, for absolutely kicking the shit out of Montana. And dude, game day.
That college game day was awesome.
Awesome.
Nick Faldo as the guest picker was hilarious. He just had no idea what he was talking about. He was just guessing. I loved it.
Well, I mean, most of the time that's what the guest picker is all about.
But usually they watch football. Nick Faldo said in Stanford, Cal's like, yeah, I'm picking Stanford. Then I'm also picking Charlie and Tiger in the PNC father-son in a couple months.
That's something we got to talk about before we go.
Oh, boy.
David Shaw. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. David Shaw had the over.
61-yard field goal. Down by 10? Yeah, down by 10.
Made it 27-20.
On the last play of the game. So you're not going to have any time left to do an onside kick and get a Hail Mary. You just kick a 61-yard field goal for the hell of it to hit the over. Like, dude, that's a tough job. Like, that's a guy who probably should be on his way out, but at the same time, like, who's going to, like, take over there? I
don't know, but, like,
kind of in some ways lucked out into Harbaugh into David Shaw. And, like, the thing is like, so these same guys who do split zone duo, they said there's nothing to anything about David Shaw leaving, and they've said if he leaves, it'll be on his own accord. But the name they threw out was Derek Mason, which like makes sense. Like he did a decent enough job at Vanderbilt, which is also a very hard place to win. But that's also a guy who like the guy who they were going to hire is at Rice. So Rice's head coach was like the top assistant for David Shaw. And thought like he might be the next guy at Stanford, and he really hire a guy who's like Rice is going to fall short of ball eligibility this year. That's a weird situation, but nevertheless, man, David Shaw, dude, you're killing me.
That's tough. That's a real bad beat.
So we wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and no bad beats. Real quick, last thing before we go, what is your favorite Thanksgiving food?
You ever have like cornbread casserole?
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite. Not like cornbread itself is fine, but the cornbread casserole where it's a little bit mushier, creamier in the middle. That for me is it. And I'm a big pumpkin pie guy as well. I like a good slice of pumpkin pie with some whipped cream on there. How about you?
So those are good answers. Very, very, very good answers. Like I like a good stuffing. Give me a good. So it's a super bummer. There's this barbecue place that has a few locations in Connecticut that does Thanksgiving catering, and they make a stuffing. And so during the pandemic year, we didn't want to cook on. They do Thanksgiving and Christmas. We didn't want to cook whatever. So we ordered from there, and their stuffing is so good. But you can only pick it up the day before Thanksgiving. So like we couldn't. I literally, dude, I would have flown. To Minnesota with a pan of stuffing in my lap if I could have. Big on the pumpkin pie. My fiance, her family tradition is pumpkin pie for breakfast while watching the parade.
So Mel Kiper.
So I may, and I'm going to say this
that sounds lovely.
Yeah, I'm going to say this into the microphone very softly because I spent way too much money on pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving. I ordered it from a bakery out here, and I got 2 of them because I got one for breakfast and then one to bring to
for dessert,
my brother's house for dessert for Thanksgiving. And I was like, we're just going to get store-bought pies. I was like, you know what, man, it's Thanksgiving. Like, let's go out and buy. And I don't know if this place is any good. It's got really good reviews, but it's like, whatever.
I'm sure it does.
You got it, yeah. So pumpkin pie.
For the last few years, we've just done Baker's Square, and their pumpkin pie is delicious. I know they're known for pies, like they're a chain that like specializes in pies, but just for a store bought or like I guess technically restaurant but chain bought pie, absolutely delicious. Don't go there on the day before Thanksgiving to go pick it up though, because that's a nightmare and the line is like 50 people deep outside. Definitely not something you want to do.
Heard Costco actually makes.
Costco does everything great. Yeah. Everything at Costco is pretty great.
All right. We managed to go an hour, which I wasn't sure we were going to do, but this was actually fun. Like maybe I should just not prep for the show more often.
Shooting from the hip, Dan. I've done it before. It's kind of fun.
All right. So I'm going to do a little quick production meeting before I go. Next week, I think since there's so few games, I think we should do some sort of contest between you, me, and Phil where we pick all of the conference something. We make a bet.
Works
And we
for
don't
me.
and we can do this as picks. You don't necessarily have to play them. If you want to, great. If not, whatever. But I think we do a picks contest next week for all of them. And you have to make a bet on every conference championship game. See how we do. Because the games are just so limited. Like, there's just not a lot going on. So I think it'd be a fun way to do it.
I am all in for that. That's pretty much exactly what Phil and I did for bowl season
games.
last year too. And I think that is probably for bowl season something we'll try and bring back as well. I know it's a lot of moving parts during the holiday season and a lot of pretty much weird times for bowl games on a Tuesday at 11. But I'll do my best to wrangle up picks from all of us. But I love that idea for conference championship game. And we'll get in touch. We'll check out Phil's schedule too. If we only do one show next week, but Phil can make it, I think that's probably a better way to go. A good plan,
yeah. And then I think I'm going to go through now, I guess, once I go back upstairs and kind of look through the bowl schedule to see if doing shows during bowl season. Obviously, we'll do something once we get to the bigger ones.
Yeah.
But it might be fun just to like come on and do a pick show for like
here's
the first
maybe
week.
for the first maybe like once a week we'll kind of preview the games coming up that week, and then once we get to the playoff we'll do more reactionary stuff. But
just to come in and see what's happening. Here's what you need to know. I might coin something because I think it's a big thing during bowl season is the give a shit index, which is how much does this team care about playing in this game.
Oh, that's a big thing in bowl games.
And I might do that. So we'll try to maybe do some of that, and
maybe I'll live stream during the Bahamas Bowl.
Ooh,
I love the Bahamas Bowl. It's always going to be the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl to me. I know it's not anymore, but it'll always be.
Even though there is no Popeyes in the Bahamas.
I'm not surprised by that.
Which we should probably rectify at some point. All right,
that's a good place to hear talking Bahamas Bowl.
Go down there and start and open a Popeyes. Just retire.
Deal.
And open a Popeyes. The English did not like Popeyes. They opened a Popeyes in England and they thought it was too spicy. And I mean the regular. The English people have terrible
not spicy at all.
This is the second.
The hot is a little spicy, but the regular's not.
Yeah, no, it's not. But it's English people. It's the second time today that the terrible palates of the English have come up in the conversation with me today. So, must be the holidays. On that note, Phil, we love you. We hope we can get you on next week. But for Matt, I'm Dan. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. Enjoy the football. We will talk to you at some point next week.